Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm looking at some of my past DIY projects that I did for my wedding back in January 2019. So this is 4 years later now, and I'm going to see how I can improve things. This video is part 1, and in this one I'm going to show the projects as they were 4 years ago when I was a beginner at all of this. And then in part 2, next week, I'm going to demonstrate how I now, with more experience and skill, would do those same projects. And I also have a few projects that I didn't do at all for my wedding 4 years ago that I'm going to do now, so all of that will be in part 2 as well. So let's get started. This first project I'm showing here is a shadow box I made where people at the wedding could drop in these little forms that I had them fill out. We'll get to those in a minute. But this here is a Procreate time-lapse of the lettering I did for this shadow box. And overall I think this turned out great. No complaints here. I wouldn't really change this, I don't think. Okay, so this is the thing that I made with that lettering I did on Procreate. And what it was for the wedding, we used it for our bucket list cards, which I'm going to get to in a minute, where people could write down stuff that we could do together, that we should add to our bucket list, basically. And then put them in this box at the wedding. And then after the wedding, what I've used it for, I've taken everything out. There isn't that much in there, but I took everything out, and it's like kind of memories kind of thing, so I can just drop in like ticket stubs and stuff like that, and we can occasionally look back and see, oh yeah, I remember when we did this, and remember when we did that, kind of thing. So it was something I could use after the wedding as well, which was nice. Now we're going to get to the actual forms I had people fill out for the bucket list. So I did the lettering for bucket list itself. This is what an example of the form looked like. So do you notice the typo near the top in the word suggestions? Yeah, that I wasn't supposed to be there. And the funny thing is, I didn't not just notice it before I printed it. I also didn't notice it after I printed it, or at the wedding. I noticed it after all of that when looking through the responses. And I was kind of like, was that like that the whole time? Why didn't I notice? But then again, I did use Microsoft Excel to make it for some reason. Why? I have no idea, considering I used Adobe Illustrator for nearly everything else. I don't know where my mind was, but anyway. I made a similar shadow box to the bucket list one for people to drop their cards into as well. I do have the time-lapse from this one as well, from Procreate. And I have a picture from the day of the wedding to show that I did in fact make this. On this table was the card box, and then the guest book next to it, which is what we're going to look at next, and then the bucket list box next to that as well. And then here is just our guest book that I made. It's just a photo book that I made through Shutterfly with some space for people to write in. The main thing I wanted to show you here was I used this initial thing that I made as the cover. And I was happy with it. The only thing that I'm doing related to this is because even though I had this on the table with the bucket list thing, and I had the shadow box with the cards that was similar to the bucket list thing, that were all kind of things that guests could interact with. I had this on the table as well with a bunch of pens next to it, or Sharpies or something. And I had several people come up to me and ask me, are we allowed to write in the book? Because I didn't make a sign because I thought it was obvious for some reason that this was a guest book and you could sign it with the pens being right next to it and it being on the table where everything was for the guests. Like there were pens by the guest, the bucket list thing that was right next to this too. So, I assumed that people would get that, but wrong assumption on my part. So what I should have done was made a sign for this table that kind of explained all these things. So that's something I'm going to do in the video next week. We're going to make a little sign for each of the things on this table to explain what you're supposed to do with all the things on this table. So, but anyway, that's all I wanted to say basically about this guest book. I don't think there's anything I wanted to show you. necessarily inside. Just a bunch of pictures of the before time, before our wedding, and a bunch of blank space. Let's see, a lot of it didn't get actually used, but and we're gonna get to this. Chaz and Otto, Assistant Chaz and Assistant Otto, they were our best cat and feline of honor at our wedding. They weren't actually there, just pictures of them, but I bought little outfits for them. Like I went to like a Goodwill, and I found a little, like, made for a little toddler little garment to kind of put over an outfit, and wrapped Otto in that and gave her a little pearl necklace. And then Chaz, I found a little dress shirt for a little toddler, and this one I had to cut up, unfortunately. This one I actually took back to Goodwill or some other donation center so someone else could use it. This one I cut up, and then I made the little bow tie myself for him. But I made these pictures, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that sat next to us on the head table. We didn't actually have a wedding party. We had cats that weren't actually present, part of our wedding party. But that's what I could show you there. And I probably would have done a little bit more with the frames now than I did, because I originally did want to write best cat and feline of honor on them, and I never did. I did paint them though, and I frosted the glass behind the mat where the pictures were. So, but anyway, that was that, and I'll kind of show you that as well in a minute. So here are those picture frames I mentioned with our best cat and feline of honor. I don't have the frames anymore. I actually donated them, so I can't really do anything else with these. I may have wanted to add best cat and feline of honor to those frames, and maybe I'll do a little mock-up in Procreate for next week's video. We'll see. But I don't have the frames anymore, so I can't actually do it. As for the invitation itself, I don't have a complete version. I'm missing a few pieces, but this is, and I never made like a mock-up, but this is basically what I had. So I had, these were like the seal for the belly band, and this is the initial thing again that I made. And then I had this, belly band I got, and then I will open it up and I'll show you what's inside. This is just a quick picture of the initials thing that I drew, and I used on a few different things. Nothing wrong with it. I don't think I would change that at this point. So I did this pocket fold from Cards and Pockets. Been a long time follower of them. Couldn't wait to use them at my wedding. But this is what I did. Now, something that did happen with my order, and I didn't notice until it was too late. They ended up sending me half of them, because I think I ordered 100. They ended up sending me half of them with the wrong type of pocket. So I had to improvise in the middle and give some people a different version. And I think this was actually the one that I didn't want. I don't remember anymore. And I don't have a copy of the other kind either, because I sent all those out. But that was something that happened, and that was something that I had ordered them a long time before I started assembling everything, and I opened one of them and made sure that they were fine, and I didn't look at the rest of the boxes because there were 4 boxes in total. 2 of them were wrong. So then, it was one of those things I had to improvise as I went. I had to kind of print things out a little differently on some of them. But that was something that could have been prevented if I had checked, a little earlier before I was doing the assembly. But there was also another, so this is the response card. There was also another card in here that had details. That's the one I'm missing. I do have a digital version I can show you, but I don't have it in the physical version right now. And I'll show the response in a second. And then just, I had one of these smaller envelopes in the pink, because our colors were navy blue and like a blush pink / rose gold kind of color palette. So both the outer envelope, which I do have a copy of, but I have to blur out the address and everything because I don't have a blank one, and I also don't have a fake one made up. So I think I had just enough envelopes, so I don't have another one. Maybe I do. Maybe I should check a little further, but anyway, I'll see in my next segment if I can find one. But anyway, there's the response card and the details card in there that I made, and that I made this lettering and the details one as well was similar, and put those in, but the rest of it was a font. And then for this is the part I'm changing for sure. This was, the design I came up with for the invitation. This is the part where I'm like, I could have done better on this. I should have done better. You'll see the changes I make in a second. But basically, I mean, I'm okay with you knowing all this information. The wedding's over anyway, so, and you pretty much, if you've been watching my videos, you know my maiden name and you know my husband's name and everything, so I think I'm okay with showing all this. But anyway, this is all the information I wanted to take to the next version of this that I made. I did change the wording a little bit of, our invitation, and you'll see. But I ended up taking out these snowflakes I made too, because first of all, I didn't have any room in the new one. Also, I don't think I did the greatest job of drawing those, especially this one. This one's a little weird. But I was kind of running out of time when I was making them, so I was just like, it looks fine, I'll put it on there. And like I said, everything, for considering how much skill I had at the time and how much knowledge I had at the time, I think they turned out well. It's just, I think I could do better now. So this is something that I do have done this week, and I'm going to show you. But I don't have like the physical copy, although I did print out the new one. I will show you that in a second. But, so this is basically what it looked like. Like I did this part, this lettering, this was the font, this I did by myself, and I did it in Procreate, and then brought it into Illustrator, and then did the rest in Illustrator, and then printed it all out. But like I said, I think I did an okay job for a beginner, but I wanted to improve it a little bit, so that's what I'm going to do right now. These are some of the early drafts of what my actual wedding invitations eventually became. Okay, so that's the old one. And this is the new one. It's not exactly the right size because I wasn't going to deal with printer settings right now. But this is the design I made. So, in theory, this would have been shrunk down to fit this card. And maybe adjusted the color a little bit because it's not exactly what I wanted. Because that's why I don't think I was using CMYK. That's probably the problem. So, but anyway, this is the new design that I have. Actually, let me show you next to the old one so I can kind of show you some of the differences. First of all, let's talk about the names here. I went a little overboard on the flourishing, and I wasn't very good at it back then, in my opinion. And I was trying to hook everything together. Like, see, I kind of hooked the S with the end of the G here for my husband's name. Trying to hook us together a little bit. It didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. But I wasn't sure how to fix it, and it's fine. Again, beginner Shannon, it's fine, but a little cringy to me now, to be honest. And then also this part here, with it being in script, I mean, it's a little easier to read than this, but I think I should have had this in print. I'm gonna, you see how I fixed it over here. I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but I did have some of them in script, some of those words in script, and I did change it a little bit, like I said, the wording, but I wasn't sure what I was trying to do here with the script and then the font, the font here, because originally I did, when I was trying to do it, I had all of this in script as well, and it was too hard to read, in my opinion, for some people. So I wasn't sure what to do at that time, so this is the best I could come up with. And then the difference with this one is, and there's a few differences. One of them is, so let me talk about this first. So on this one, I did make the names a little larger, which is something you should do with a wedding invitation. Usually it depends on, you know, what you want to do for design, but because it's a wedding invitation and what people want to know is like who's getting married, and that's something they're going to scan your invitation for, like looking for, oh, it's Ross and Shannon, they're getting married. And, you know, the date and stuff like that should be a little bigger. I actually didn't make the date that big in this one, but, you know, that's a choice. But I did kind of do that here. I made the names bigger. But then, like, the rest of the information is kind of lost and kind of hard to read in some places, and I should have just designed it better. I don't know how to explain it, you know, how bad this is. I know I'm being kind of critical of myself, and again, I was a beginner, but again, like, it's, to me now, looking at it with the knowledge I have, looking back on it, I'm like, oh, this is awful. But like I said before in another video, I've had people come up to me that were at my wedding that tell me, oh my God, your invitation, I still have it, I treasure it, it's so, you know, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, okay. Because, I mean, like, I think they're appreciating the handmade quality, which is what I still did here. I did it handmade. I didn't use any fonts for this, but I could have done a better job. And this, I feel, is a much better job. It's what I should have done. You know, if I had the skill I have now, getting married 4 years ago, that's what I would have done. But this wasn't that bad, I suppose. But all right, so I might come back to this while I'm talking about this, but let's move on to this. So what I did, one of the things I decided to do was just make our first names kind of very large and script and kind of flowy, and not as flourished as these, but, you know, flourished. And the reason this goes off the page is it was designed that way. Like, this actually, right here, this part of the R went off the page too, because it was kind of a design choice, like, oh, it's coming in from the outside kind of thing. And also because I was running out of room. Not only that. So this isn't cut out the way it's supposed to be. It's on a piece of paper. So that's part of the reason why it looks kind of funny. But yeah, I made, so Ross and Shannon all kind of in the same line and all in script. And then I put our last names down here in block lettering and all lined up with each other. And then for this next part, so I changed the wording a bit. Like, this one says, invite you to join them in celebration as they begin their marriage. And this is the one I changed to invite you to celebrate with them as they take the next step in their lives together by becoming husband and wife, which I think is a better way to say it. But I couldn't come up with that when I was trying to come up with it here. And that, you know, our invitation and our wedding in general was a little more modern, you know, be casual or semi-casual. And we were doing all the paying for everything and inviting people ourselves. So, like, in that regard, that was, you know, we are inviting you to this thing, not like the traditional wedding invitations. So coming up a way to word that, this is, I think, the best option that I could choose for our wedding. I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but, and if you like it, feel free to copy it if you want, it's fine. But I chose to then put celebrate and together in a script to kind of emphasize those words, and then husband and wife as well, and make husband and wife larger, celebrate together larger as well, to kind of, again, if someone's scanning this, they see, oh, Ross and Shannon celebrate together, husband and wife. We haven't gotten there yet, but Embassy Suites, that's where we got married. You know, so all the information is, oh, okay, this is a wedding invitation, this is what I need. Now I'm intrigued, I want to read the whole thing. So, you know, it looks a lot better, it's easier on the eyes, it's easy to scan and read than this one. This one's This one's awful in that regard, in my opinion, again. So this is much better. And I didn't have the address on here, but I did have it on the details card, I believe, for the Embassy Suites. But I had the actual name, which is Embassy Suites Milwaukee Brookfield, technically. Put the address on here on this one so people would know in case they have to put it in their little map or whatever, or their GPS, I mean. And then I was trying to squish the rest of this information in this little spot here. So I did put promptly, and I did change the time apparently because this is 9:50, but promptly I did put that here because I was of the attitude where I'm not waiting for people. If they're late, they're late. And I'm just going to start the ceremony and, getting people there ahead of time. For the most part, everyone came on time anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. But I don't have that on this one because I can't fit it. But I did have it on my original invitation, like, be here on time. And then, I changed a champagne brunch will follow the ceremony to champagne brunch will follow, or to follow, which says the same thing but in much less words. And again, I shortened the ceremony will begin promptly at 9:50 to ceremony 9:45. Should have been 50 because I think originally I was going to do 9:45 and then I said no, 9:50 is better. I don't know why, but whatever. So that was a little discrepancy there when I created this. Not a big deal. It's not like it's actually happening. But then, the actual date is up here too. This is when it's going to happen. This is when the ceremony starts, and then there'll be a brunch to follow. That's pretty much all you need to know. And then again, I did have a details card that went into a little more detail about things, and that I will show you digitally. That was in the pocket as well. And I'll show you the response card real quick. But before I do that, here is a time lapse from Procreate of when I made the updated version. So you'll see a little bit of the process that went into it. Again, I think this is way better. Pretty proud of it at this point. Maybe 4 years from now I might think, oh, that was bad too. But right now I'm proud of it. Alright, so this was an example of the response card. Blurred out some information, but I just want to show you the way we set it up. And we had I blurred this out, but we had a website where people could go to and then a form they could fill out to RSVP. And it was password protected and everything. And then another thing we did was, again, I was a little more strict about this. Like, if no response is received, regrets will be assumed and reserved seats will be removed. So basically, if I don't hear from you, I'm not going to chase down RSVPs because I didn't want to do that. So, and then I have the respond date by, and we're actually pretty lenient about this because normally people do it like a month ahead of time. Ours was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think. And then we reserved, a specific number of seats for these specific people. And sometimes, depending on who it was, like this person and a guest, because we didn't know who they were bringing. And then, please circle 1, yes. And then this is the reason why I have this, is because this was actually a misprint, because I forgot to change it to we are, because I would change everyone. This one's 2 people, so it would be we are attending, not I am. And no, I am not, or no, we are not. And then I asked people to give me their names because something I was going to do, which I'm getting to, I was going to do, first in my plan I was going to do a seating chart, and then I was going to do place cards at the table. And that's something I'm going to do for a project next week. But what I ended up doing was making escort cards instead, which are kind of, best of both worlds. Because my original plans didn't really work out the way I wanted them to, for many reasons. I'll probably talk about that more either in this video or next week's video. And I'll show you what I did for the escort cards too. They weren't that pretty. They were kind of last minute. But again, people love those, and they took them home and they're like, oh, I still have this. You know, my grandma has them displayed in her house, and my sister took a picture and she put it in her post of, you know, the wedding. But anyway, that is what the response card looked like. And then I had a, you know, a mini envelope that I pre-filled out for people to send back if they didn't want to RSVP online. And this was the details card that was also part of the invitation, just to let you know some of what's on here. There is details about the hotel on top, and then I also had information about the hotel room block and more information about the wedding website we had. Now I don't have a version of this as well, so this was actually, I didn't have an envelope liner in my actual invitations. I brought this as a sample, and this is one of the sample envelopes I got, and ended up not doing it. But looking, if I were to do it again, I probably would have done an envelope liner. I probably would have made something myself and put it in there. And that's something, again, this project, if I do it, like completely revamp my invitations, I will do next year for my anniversary. We'll do something like that. I just don't have it done this year, and I'm not going to get it done. So, and we'll see if I still want to do it next year. We'll see. But anyway, I had the envelope liner planned, but didn't end up doing that. This isn't the actual envelope I used. It's similar to the one I used. I have a copy right here. Here's the back of it. The reason it's open is because it came back to me because the address was slightly wrong. So you can see it's not exactly the same envelope. Like this one's a little shinier. But it's a similar color, like the blush pink color. But anyway, this is the envelope I used, and so I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to start the video again, and I'm going to blur out what I need to blur out, but I'll show you kind of what I did for the addresses. Okay, so this is again the one that came back to me because the address was slightly wrong. I'm still not going to show it to you even though it was wrong, but I'll just show you kind of what I did as far as the lettering on my envelopes. But I ended up, the thing I did here that I was planning on doing and didn't do was I had just started learning pointed pen calligraphy and like dipping in ink with a flexible nib. And I wasn't confident enough to do all my envelopes. I wanted to do it, but I just didn't think that I was gonna, and plus I was starting to run out of time, like feeling the crunch of having to do everything. So I decided I was just going to do brush pen instead, which was fine. It turned out a similar result, but not quite as fancy, which was okay because our wedding wasn't like formal or anything anyway, so it probably would have looked a little weird. But I am going to show me making one of those envelopes the way I wanted to. But I did use a brush pen, not faux calligraphy. I did a brush pen for the name, and then did do the address in monoline. So to give you an idea of what that looked like, there you go. This got a little stained somehow, but this is just my template I made for actually doing the calligraphy on the envelopes. So I put it inside the envelope, and it was light enough for me to shine it through a light pad and be able to see all this through the envelope. So if you go back to my holiday envelopes video or any envelopes video I make after this, you'll see, like because I wanted to do all the names in script and then all the addresses in block. So then this was always the zip code, and you know how I had everything centered, so I always count where I should do things from, even though this is kind of backwards. I don't remember exactly how I use this, but I guess nowadays I would put one over here, so I know, okay, I need this many spaces to the the left of the middle line, and I would continue it on here too. I don't know why I don't have it on the right, but this is the template I made for myself and was using to make my envelopes back then, 4 years ago, a little more than 4 years ago. For reference, here was my setup for doing the invitations. You can see my assistant was helping out. That is Assistant Chaz. This gives you an idea of how I used the light pad to shine through the envelope so I could see the template inside and create my lettering on the envelope. And just to show you real quick, another thing I was going to do, this is another pocket fold that I had left over. I thought about making snowflakes, like cut out snowflakes in each of these, and realized it was a little fickle and it was going to take a long time, so I'm like, never mind, I'm not going to do this, but this is an idea I had. So that almost happened on my envelopes, or my pocket folds, not my envelopes. And then here's a copy of my thank you card I made. The design I made in Procreate. I've actually used it a few times since for other things. The flourishing's not too bad on here. It's a little, I don't know, what do I want to say? Like, it's a little tighter. I do things a little more looser now, I guess. Or more loose, I don't know what's proper there. So anyway, but I had these printed through Shutterfly. I just made them. I didn't really have much of a choice back then. I just put a picture from the wedding up there, and then space to write thank you to people. That was our thank you card. And here's the thank you part from sketch to final design. All right, so the Rushing Tribune. So this was one of the projects I was pretty proud of. Because we were doing a brunch thing, I thought this was appropriate. And a lot of the things that I wanted to make signs for, I could incorporate into the newspaper instead. So that's why I didn't make a lot of signs for our wedding. This is the logo that I made that I am changing, modernizing for this. Again, I think the flourishing is a little weird, but it's going to be similar, and you'll see that. But anyway, I made a newspaper thing. So oddly enough, I don't have a full version of this. I do somewhere. I just don't know where it is right now. But I only had, so for the thing that went wrong with this, for the actual wedding, I only had 4, I think, copies of an actual completed newspaper. There were 10 pages, I believe. I'll have to count because I have the printed out version on regular paper that I'll have in a minute. But so this is just like the front page, and I have another side here, and then I have nothing else in the middle there. There were a few other pages I had that were different pages, but they weren't completed versions of this. But anyway, just to kind of show you what it looked like folded up, like this is a little newspaper. I made it on actual newsprint. I got the big sheets of it at a craft store, and just folded it up and sent it through my printer a couple times. So I will show you more about what was in the newspaper. Again, I don't have the full version. I have it somewhere, just don't know where. But it shows you that I didn't actually do anything with it afterwards. I mean, I wanted to kind of make a shadow box or something with all the memories, including our invitation. Maybe I'll do that for next year, because I'm going to kind of redo some of this stuff. So I could actually print out some more of these too. I do have the files. But anyway, the thing I did wrong was I only had 4 ready for the wedding because I underestimated how much time it would actually take. I knew it was going to take a lot of time, but my printer gets kind of overwhelmed after printing a few pages. It's like, oh my God, I can't print anymore. And it takes like a break for like 10 minutes. Okay, fine, I'll bring some more in. So, and I had to do everything one at a time by hand. And so I probably could have got it printed somewhere. I was just stubborn and wanted to do it myself. But so that is, I can explain a little more how I did it, but this is the newspaper. So this is actually missing a few pages as well. But I think I had 12 pages altogether, because that makes sense with it being a multiple of 4. So this has 10. I missed a few out of here. But anyway, just to give you kind of an idea of what was in here. So I had the logo, a picture of us that was taken, where we met. But 3 years later, not on the actual day we met. But anyway, this was, a little dorky newspaper I wanted to make for the wedding. This had like basically our story of how we met and everything. I just put a little weather thing in here, again being dorky. Live wedding slideshow. So that is something that actually didn't happen the way I wanted it to. Actually happen at all, I guess. But that was the instructions for that if it would have happened. And then this was an explanation of the bucket list thing that I was going to make a sign for, bucket list, guest book, and the cards thing. But this is the explanation of that. And then we had, instead of doing it was in the morning, and a couple reasons we decided not to do like a DJ and a dance floor and stuff. So we did activities instead. So we had a bunch of stuff they could do in there. So then we had, instead of having like a memorial table or family history or whatever, I put them in the newspaper. So these are, my husband's family, and then my family. And then we did like a timeline of kind of important things that happened to us before we got married. And then the rest of it's just a bunch of like really dorky stuff. Like, this is what we like to do. And I'm not going to show you all that. Some of that, can stay private off of YouTube. So, but that was the things we were missing. I know one of them was like I had, even though we didn't have a wedding party, and again, our cats weren't there, we had like a little program, like the stuff you would find in the program. Like, this is our officiant's name, who was a friend of my mom and my mom's sister, my aunt. As they were growing up, I knew her, from birth. Hadn't seen her in a while, but I kind of forgot she did officiating for weddings. And I was like, oh, good, I need one. Because the one I originally was going to do ended up not working out. So I was like, oh, I could use my friend, my mom's friend. But anyway, so I had the officiant, and then for the procession, into the ceremony, I had my sister and her boyfriend at the time. They're now engaged, soon to be married at some point. I had them walk my grandma down the aisle. It's the only grandparent that is alive between my husband and me. All the rest of them have passed on. They're part of the memorial in our newspaper. But since, she was grandparent and she's the only one left alive, I had my sister and her fiance walk her down the aisle to give her a little special moment. And then I had, whichever way you want to look at it, my husband escort his parents down the aisle, or his parents escort him down the aisle. And then the same with my parents. My parents both escorted me down the aisle, or I escorted them. But that's the way we did it for our procession and our ceremony. And then I had who these all were. Again, what you would find in a program. And then the songs we used for the procession and the processional and recessional to our wedding. So it was kind of a program page of these. And then the other one, I'd have to look. I do have the digital files, so I'm going to have to look at that one. I don't remember right this moment what they were. If it's important, I'll let you know, but probably not important. But anyway, that is the newspaper I made, and this is not something I'm changing. The only thing I would change is the logo is going to be different. And again, I would make more copies. But I ended up giving, so we kept a copy. I have it somewhere. Then I gave one to my grandma, because she especially is those nostalgic. She likes to keep those things. And then I gave one each to both of our parents. So, and I asked everyone at this ceremony, if they, or the reception, if they wanted one, I would gladly make them one. And no one wanted one, so I left it alone.
Here is one of the pages from the Rushing Tribune that was missing. The other one was more stuff from the end of the paper that I skipped over anyway, but this one was the one I was talking about with the ceremony program information, and I blocked that out because there's names there. But I also had the schedule of events and a menu on there, which I kind of forgot I did, but that was a good idea. And here is the lettering for the Rushing Tribune that I did. Unfortunately, for many of these projects, I don't have the time-lapse recording from Procreate. I've gotten much better about keeping that stuff since then. The last thing I'm showing you here is the wedding logo I made. Again, no time-lapse. But I do have some early sketches, and I also have some examples of the photo overlay things I was trying to make for the wedding. I ended up not actually using these for the wedding, but I did test them out. I'm not a selfie taking person, so whenever I take one, I usually make a stupid face like this, and this. But anyway, this logo is the first thing I'm going to work on for next week's video, and I'm going to use it for more things that I make next week as well.
All right, everyone. That is going to do it for this week's video. Stay tuned until the very end. I've got some bonus footage and sneak peeks for you. But first, I want to thank you, yes you, for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you found it to be helpful, use those buttons. If you want to see more, you can follow Shrush Design on social media. The links are all in the description. And if you would like to browse my online shops, I have 2 Etsy shops and a Fiverr account, also listed below. If you are local to southeastern Wisconsin, I have even more services available, so you'll want to check out my website for that information. But wait, there's more! If you happen to be planning a wedding in the near future, I have another YouTube channel called Shrush Design Weddings, through which I discuss all of the choices you'll have while planning your wedding. And I also have another channel called Poised Pencraft, through which I teach the art of lettering, calligraphy, and some graphic design skills if you want to learn how to create your own designs from scratch and make each project truly your own. Links for both of those channels are, you guessed it, in the description. So if you're all subscribed now and ready for next week's video, I'll see you then. For now though, I'll leave you with the bonus footage and sneak peeks. Enjoy!
I didn't have much to include for the bonus footage this week, so I decided to post the full camera roll of outtakes for when I dressed Chaz and Otto up for their portraits that I ended up using for the wedding. So enjoy that. Otto was a lot easier to get a photo of. Chaz first hid under the kitchen table, and then he ran down to the basement and wouldn't stand still for a picture. So that was a lot of fun. I finally did get a halfway decent one of him, eventually. For the sneak peek, next week on the 1st of February will be the part 2 of this video, and you have a good idea of what that will be, so I'll leave that one alone for now. Then on the 8th, I'm going to be doing a layouts basics video. I'm planning on eventually doing a few of these at some point. This first one is going to focus a lot on math, how you use it when making a layout for a design. Trust me, it'll be a little more exciting than it sounds, I promise. Then on the 15th, that will be the full video tutorial of the seating chart that I'm doing for next week's video. This is what I have on the schedule for the next couple of weeks. So I will see you all again next week for part 2, right? Bye for now.